Well, I think that you don't really uncover what your mind is or what you're capable of mentally until you start doing hard shit or challenging things in your life.
Yeah. And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. We are here today with Justin Groth. I had a great conversation chatting with him, talking about fitness, talking about mindset, talking about health. And I was like, man, we got to get you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us. Your energy is always very high. And you got a lot of stuff on the go, dude.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, glad to have you here. So talk a little bit about the beginning of your journey getting into this space and why you're here, why this is so important for you.
So I really kind of fell into it when I was in high school. I really kind of was wayward and like most kids, most teenagers, trying to find your identity, man. Like who you're going to become, what you're going to be. And it was no different with me. And I fell into fitness because I had body issues. And, I want to give some context to the audience. I was by no means super skinny or super fat. I was right in the middle, but I've always been a hard critic over myself. And I've always been critiqueful over my body, critiqueful really over everything in life. And at least in terms of what I'm doing in life. And so my body, I started to realize I wanted to just look different. I think that's really what it boiled down to. I wanted to look different and I wanted to tighten up in areas but I didn't know how to do so. So I really just did it the wrong way. And I dieted very severely, meaning I ate like one meal a day and that was comprised like a turkey sandwich and a Diet Coke, and an apple or something. And I did a lot of cardio. I skateboarded, I ran, I walked, I did all that sort of thing. And I got okay in decent shape, but then I got to the point where I was looking really frail and skinny and I got to the point where I was clinically anorexic. And so that probably came because I have an addictive personality as well. So I ended up seeking out help. I told, this is when I was early on in my life, when I was like 18, 19. I told my family, look, man, I'm not going to reverse this. I can tell where this is going. It's going to be really hard for me to reverse this. I need to have professional counsel take care of me, show me I just want somebody that knows what they're talking about to tell me what to do and get me out of this rut. So I ended up seeing a nutritionist. I ended up seeing back then coaches weren't really a thing, like weight loss coaches, mindset coaches, fitness coaches. They weren't really a thing. This is back in like the early 2000s. So social media wasn't a thing for sure, really, except for, MySpace and I don't know if Facebook existed back then.
You're dating yourself, man. You got to be careful.
Yeah. So I ended up getting a nutritionist and then seeing a personal trainer 3 times a week. And so that was really the impetus behind me getting into fitness. And then I started getting on the supplementation, like everything under the sun in terms of what you could buy at your NutriShop, protein, branched chains, pre-workout, creatine, et cetera, right? And then the addiction went in the opposite direction. Now I'm starting to really admire the results that I'm getting, and I want to get more and more. And then that led me to be in the gym 5 times a week instead of 3 times a week without a personal trainer. I was doing this on my own. And it really showed me what I was capable of on my own, because before then, like most kids, we play in teams, we play sports, we do things in a team effort. And this is all individualized. And this is an individual effort. Nobody's pushing you to go. I didn't really operate on a buddy system, although I had people that worked out with me often here and there. But I learned quickly you can't rely on people. And so this really boils down to you becoming better for you, etc. And that's what ended up leading me into the understanding of I can do things on my own that I didn't think I could do prior. And it just was a really insightful, what would you call it? Insightful understanding. And then I ended up getting enough muscle and catching the eye of one of the guys in the gym that had done bodybuilding shows before. And he planted this seed in me. He said, look, man, I really think you should try a bodybuilding show. And so because he had done so many and because he looked good himself, I mean, obviously that hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, oh, really? I still remember the exact place where we were in the gym when he told me. I remember what I was wearing. I remember how I felt. Everything. It was very, very impactful. And so when he said that, I quickly started to look things up and what would this look like? Do I have to hire a coach? He actually lent me some information on a natural coach. When I say natural, I mean drug free. He's a drug free bodybuilder himself, and that's the avenue I wanted to take. I'm a drug free athlete. I've been a drug free athlete. It's the only thing I know, and it's what I love the most about my bodybuilding pursuit, because not many bodybuilders can say that, at least nowadays. So
for sure.
And
most athletes in any sport have that as a challenge as well. Yeah. I mean, you look at the UFC, you look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you look at any of the sports that are out there, that is definitely a problem.
Absolutely. And I take pride in that. I take a lot of pride in that. And that's something that was my, obviously, moral decision. And but it's never failed me thus far. And I'm very happy that I stuck to my guns that way. And I never ended up going down that path. Well, anyways, ended up bodybuilding, doing a litany of shows. And it was all in an untested organization because I just didn't want to travel. All the federations that were doing sanctioned shows that were natural were all Midwest. And I'm from California. I'm not gonna travel Midwest to do a bodybuilding show, especially one that I'm not winning money in or nothing like that, you know. So I stayed local, but you know the what would I say, the bad thing about that was because you're going to compete against guys that are enhanced, and I just said screw it, I'm going to do it anyways, just to see what I'm up against, see how well I can do against people that are not necessarily natural or probably not natural. So, and I was blessed to do really well, man. I was blessed to do really, really well, and I'm very grateful for that time in my life, that season of my life. It ended up leading in me being a personal trainer, which led to me opening a personal training business, a brick and mortar, and really the rest is history from there, man.
Now, when you're sitting there, or standing there rather, on stage or after stage or whatever it is the bodybuilding competition, and the person there who knows they're using an enhancement is beside somebody who is, you know, telling them they're not, is there some sort of conversation that happens in that kind of a dialogue? Like, what does that look like?
No, nothing. No, for one, nobody really knows for sure. I mean, I've met guys that are questionable, and I would consider myself questionable too. If I was to see myself in the gym training, I would look at me like that guy's on at least something, like he's on some maybe TRT, he's on maybe some Anavar or something like that. And you don't really know at the end of the day, because you don't really understand someone's genetics, their genetic lineage, how blessed they were from you know, infancy, so to speak. You know, you don't know what these things look. So the conversation is probably not had because it's sort of taboo, even for guys that are doing it. It's like guys don't really talk about. At least that's been my experience. Even though I know somebody's fully geared out, the last thing he talks about is drugs. The first thing he talks about is himself and how he's done this and how this has happened and how much he can bench press and deadlift and squat. But nobody's willing to place the white elephant in the open and say, yeah, but also my bench went up 150 pounds after I started using Anadrol and testosterone, 500 milligrams a week, etc. Nobody's willing to have that. Not nobody. Most people aren't willing to have that conversation, man. So it's not really talked about, but I'm sure there have been conversations about it. It's just nothing that I've been aware of or been a part of.
Yeah, I don't think we see that in the fighting arena as well. Nobody really talks about it, at least in the circles that I'm in. When you see somebody who is, because it happens all the time, especially I'm 48. So a lot of people, once they get into the over 40 competitions, there's a lot of TRT in the over 40 competition, and I don't take anything. And so, so the idea is, you're always going to compete against something like that. It's just, you know, it's out there, you know, it's going to be there. Some people tell you to do it with pride, and other people, because TRT, it's almost, they feel like because it's got a cool name on it, it's not, but you know, it's one of those things where, it's definitely an enhancement for sure.
It is.
And I know there are people who do have, you know, problems with their testosterone, and it is running low, and it does typically run low as you get older. And so, I mean, I guess if I'm personally enhanced by my own DNA, that I don't have that as an issue, you know, then that's not a problem. But, you know, maybe it might be six years from now. I mean, who knows? It's always, I guess that's one of those hard conversations to have.
Yeah, but a lot of people can play themselves and coerce themselves into thinking that they have an issue when they don't. You know, what you see on a piece of paper that says your testosterone, your free testosterone levels, etc., that is all very, very open to interpretation. I mean, a lot of things there's a lot of variables at play when you test your blood. I mean, when you test it, if you got food in your system, all these things can directly affect the amount of testosterone that's actually representative in your bloodstream. And so if you see a number that's a lot lower than normal and you show this to your doctor and he says, well, yeah, you're a candidate for TRT, when really true TRT replacement therapy is all symptom derived. So meaning if you have the symptoms of low T, like a very waning libido, if you're lethargic, if you have no motivation, if you're losing muscle, if you don't have a lot of energy, etc., like all these, if you're storing fat, all these things are very, very indicative of low T. But most people will wipe the symptoms under the table and look at the number on a paper, but well, I guess I'm a candidate for TRT. No, it's because you want to take these drugs and you're giving yourself an excuse and out to take these drugs, a justification, in other words. It's not because you need them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times people will self-prescribe and they'll self-prescribe many different things. I think what you think about is what you say, and what you say is what you do, and what you do becomes your legacy. That's something out of the mouth of a guy by the name of Brandon Dawson. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, because if you think that, you're going to manifest that. And I think that comes down to our conversation earlier about talking about, well, then manifest your identity. Like, what is your identity? Like, who are you? And work from there as a first starting point, and then start building from there.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So when you're working with people and you're talking about, as you're a master trainer, you've got your podcast going, you do mindset coaching, fitness coaching, a lot of different things. When you're getting into the mindset element of things, because I think we both agree that mindset is one of the most fundamental things when you're trying to achieve anything. And it's one of those people think about, it's almost like a frou-frou kind of thing. And when really it isn't, it is the first battleground that you have to win in order to be successful at anything.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that you don't really uncover what your mind is or what you're capable of mentally until you start doing hard shit or challenging things in your life.
Yeah.
You're really never going to know what that looks like, and you're not going to know where to start. So the thing I tell people at the lowest level that you could grab, what you could start doing is some type of fitness. Throw yourself into some type of fitness, some type of resistance training that you hold at a discipline, meaning you do it X amount of times a week. If you say you're going to do it 3 times a week, you do it 3 times a week, not 2 times a week. You hold yourself to a certain diet model, something that keeps you healthy, in shape, full of energy, and recovered with regards to your training bouts. All these, you stick to these things through the thick and the thin times. That's where you start to uncover this mental disciplinarian that you didn't know you had, because it's very easy to absolve yourself of something that isn't needed. We don't need to go to the gym, although it should be the first line of defense with any person that's going through any kind of, let's say, ailment, neurological, physiological, or otherwise. It should be the first line of defense in terms of the medication that we prescribe them. But it's not. And so because of that, people think of fitness as an afterthought, or they think of working out, lifting weights as all vanity. Well, it may be that at the beginning, but the thing is, what it turns into is something that is priceless, and you can't buy, and you can't purchase, and you can't go to a seminar and receive. You have to be able to put yourself through these fires, so to speak, in order to see what you can withstand. So that's
John Danaher, a coach that I highly regard.
Yeah,
in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, he taught Gordon Ryan. Teaches Gordon Ryan. Taught Georges St. Pierre. And one of the things he said is that the beauty of Jiu-Jitsu, and I think a lot of sports you could say this, or just athletics, is that it helps you to make decisions under stress. And I think that's something that a lot of people today. We try to avoid stress. We try to avoid conflict. We try to avoid chaos. And I was just on a podcast with a lady about parenting, and I said one of the most important things as a parent to do is to help your kids embrace chaos. Is the more chaos you can put them in, and the more they're able to find clarity and peace within chaos, the better they're going to be able to form in the real world. And I think as adults, we have to find ourselves in manufactured chaos and things like the gym or sports or anything like that, So then when we go into the chaos of our real life, which is relationships, our jobs, the global politics or whatever else that's out there that's affecting us, we're able to handle those things because we've trained ourselves to go through stress.
That's a really good way to place that. Yeah, I believe that 100%, man. Manufactured chaos is a really good title you have, and a rather description. That's really, really good.
Oh, thanks, man. TM. And
TM.
But the truth is too many times we, as parents, we're trying to protect our kids. And as a society, we're trying to put, bubble wrap around each other and say, like, I just heard this thing. Now you're going to laugh. This is up in Canada. I heard this thing where there's a school board that now has 47 words that are not allowed to be said in the school because somebody might find them offensive. And like some of the words are like crazy. So if you said like, that's crazy amazing, you could be punished for saying the word crazy because they think it's offensive. And I'm like, if this is the direction we're going, we're leading to very weak people.
Very weak. No, it's not. And it's not even a question. That's what's going to happen. More and more people are getting offended by the smallest of infractions. And it's absurd. And it's definitely not what built the country, man. We didn't build the country based on being soft and walking on eggshells around everybody. But now at the turn of any kind of word you say, it seems like it's offensive to most people. And it's the reason why I don't subscribe to most things liberal or most things democratic. I'm very structured. There's an ordinance behind me. There's an obedience behind me. There's boundaries in place. And I just don't see blue people or democratic or liberal people having that. It's like they want to make justifications for things. They want to let things be open to interpretation. It's like, no, that's not how we built this world. We didn't build this world by being open to whatever. We built this world on strong leadership, guidance, which means we have boundaries in place. We have structures in place. We have an order of operations. And also we have the freedom to speak whatever we want.
Yeah. True freedom, I think, comes with boundaries.
Yeah.
Because if you know the structure of the environment that you're in and you're able to understand the boundaries, like if I know that gravity works every day, that it's not like someday gravity is going to work and some days it's not going to work. It'd be pretty hard to drive a car to work today. I'm like, just gravity. Let's see, maybe it's going to happen. Maybe not. And so, but the understanding of the principles of science, knowing that it's working every day, allows me to be able to operate and create freedom of movement around because I understand that that's going to work. Well, the same principles apply in other elements of science. And so we know principles and we can know what an object is and define what that object is. We can create relationships. And once we create relationships to those objects, we can then start to create even bigger building blocks. So I think once we build up principles and fundamentals, we're able to do things. And look, when I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we use the same thing. We use principles. We use to create objects. Those objects, we relate those objects, and that's how you become more effective in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the same thing applies probably in bodybuilding. It applies in anything that you're probably teaching.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. The one thing that I found interesting that you're talking earlier about is about discipline, and I think the importance of discipline. And this is something that I think is a theme that I think really needs to be pushed, from C to signing C, and is the idea of discipline. Because I think a lot of people play in the motivation space, and they avoid the discipline space because it just seems pretty boring, where motivation seems, really exciting. And what's your thoughts then on motivation versus discipline?
I'm getting tired of both words, to be honest with you. And I think that both words are overplayed, oversaturated, and not really understood. And I think that discipline is nothing more than doing shit that you know is going to better yourself for whatever it is that you're trying to better. Mm-hmm. So I don't do things because, like, for example, I don't keep training because it's necessarily discipline. It's become autonomous. I just do it. It's just something that I do. It's like pissing or shitting. It's something I do. But at the same time, I don't care to be rewarded over it. Like, well, I'm disciplined. Look at me. I'm working out. I'm bettering me. I'm keeping my streak going. I'm placing things of importance in my life, and I'm not letting myself down. And that's the most important thing that you could do. So you could call it discipline or whatever, but you're basically not letting yourself down from whatever it is you said you're going to seek out to accomplish. And that by extension leads you to be disciplined. But you're not looking at it from a word play. You're looking at it from an overall all-encompassing action of I'm bettering myself. And this is the necessary steps I need to take. These are just necessary. No one's exempt of doing these things.
Now, if you look at what you just said, and I think it's, and I agree, a lot of times words get overused and they get then diminished. But the idea, I think, what you've really talked about there is when you say there's motivation. Motivation kind of gets us started doing things. Discipline kind of creates the repetitive nature of doing things. And I believe willpower underpins all of that, because if we don't have that, we won't continue. But I think if we can use the motivation or discipline, whichever gets us started, and we maintain repetitive tasks through discipline, just keeping focus, and then we move into the next phase, which I think is what you're really saying, is once you've achieved the past the monotony, and it becomes more part of your identity, because what you're doing is part of your identity. Like it would be weird if somebody said to you, like, "Hey, Justin, let's just go out and go party in Ibiza for like 3 weeks and do crack cocaine." You'd be like, "That's really not my thing. That's outside of my identity." And so the fact is it's become so ingrained into you. You've stepped to the next level of it's part of your identity.
Sure. And I think people should strive to get to a different level in life. And that's where they're not doing that. They're okay with where they're at. And I can assure you that where you're at is not where you're supposed to be. Even if you're okay where you're at, that's not what you're created to be. Everything you're created to be. You could do more than that. You could be more than that. But most people don't ever want to accept any more challenges in life. They don't want to accept any uncomfortability. And so that's the reason why they stay there. And they lie to themselves, keeping themselves in that delusional state of, well, no, I'm fine where I'm at. I'm okay. You're not.
Absolutely. I think good is the enemy of great, and greatness is always right around the corner. And then as soon as you get to greatness then becomes good.
Sure.
And then you got to go to the next one.
Right. Because your goalposts are moving. And you're obviously what you've been able to accomplish now. Well, the bar keeps moving higher and higher. And there's obviously a threshold in which I think that human beings get to where, okay, this is too much. Like, really, what am I doing at this point? What am I trying to achieve? And then it's nothing more than the ego that you're chasing or power that you're chasing. And I think those can be very nefarious if used wrong in nature. But right now at this level, you, myself, anybody else even listening to this podcast, we're not there yet. I mean, we've got layers and layers of levels to meet, or I'm sorry, levels and levels to meet before we get to that point where we're like, okay, what am I really chasing now? You know, I mean, am I chasing movement for the betterment of everybody around me, or am I just chasing money, power? Am I chasing influence? What am I chasing? And I think the first thing that we need to chase is our better selves. Period. I know that sounds cliche. That sounds like a platitude that you read on Instagram, but it's the truth. You need to be chasing your better version, because really you're nothing right now and you could be much more.
Yeah, I think the idea, and Grant talks a lot of times about when you're chasing, and when we talk about income and wealth, is his whole belief is always stay broke. And so every time you make a little bit of money, park it in wealth. Make a little bit of money, park it in wealth. And when you do that, you always stay in a mindset of being broke. And so you're always saying that, like, right now, I'm starting from nothing. I mean, if we go back to the crackhead analogy, and I know this probably sounds inhumane to talk about it this way, but somebody who has a drug addiction, every morning they wake up, they have nothing. At the end of every day, they have drugs. So if anybody knows how to succeed at their task, they're very good at doing that. Now, imagine if they could pivot and use that towards something that would benefit their lives.
True. The only difference is with the people that are seeking drugs and the people that are seeking something of measurable growth and influence in their life is that that latter version takes a lot longer. whereas drugs are instant gratification at the end of the day. So it's like, I can get drugs in the next 12 hours. Well, if I want to create something of measurable growth that not only imparts more of a status to my name, but a servants to people around me and a legacy to leave, that's going to take years, if not decades, to build. And that's why it's easy to depart from that type of work than just the quick idea of getting drugs at the end of the day. Like that's like making $100. Like anybody can make $100 in a day. How can you make 100 grand in a day? How can you make $1 million in a day? You can't. Most people can't. I mean, unless you're Andrew Tate or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, you're not going to be making $1 million a day. So but that's the juxtaposition between long-lived legacy and measurable growth, juxtaposed to quick food for the day, like, or drugs for the day, whatever you want. I get your analogy. And I think it's great. I'm just saying that there's a bigger difference in that quick, short-lived,
Yeah, I like the addition, because I think what the addition tells me is that the idea that the short-term focus of, as you said, getting that quick-term fix of $100 or whatever it is, like I made my $30 today or whatever it is, I feel good. But trying to take that person out of the mindset of just winning the day, but winning the legacy.
Sure.
Right. And it's not winning the battle, it's winning the war.
That's
and
good.
To get that mindset around the long-term game. What's the mechanism to help them realize that?
This can go in two different directions. It can go into a spiritual direction, or it can go into a direction of simply, I would say the other direction would be something more like humane. Like, if they think that they're worth more, if they have something that it's brewing inside of them, they're trying to bring out to the world, but they don't know how to bring it out, so to speak. Like if there's a gift that they have that they know what that is, but they don't know how to extract it and give it to others, that can kind of lead people to be frustrated and actually just give up, especially if the things don't happen as quickly as they'd like. But spiritually, if you believe in God and you believe that God made you for a reason, and you believe that you're on this planet for a reason, and you believe that God entrusted you with certain talents, and it's your job and if not obligation to find what these are and then extract them, well, then you're always searching and seeking. But if you're not spiritual, you might not believe that. You might just believe you're here just to do work and die, just to live your life out and then die, and it really doesn't really mean anything. So it depends on what edge of the spectrum you're on. For me personally, I'm very spiritual. I believe in God, etc. So I started off that way. And I still believe that I saw these talents and gifts, etc. But now more so, maybe because I know that the creator of the universe gave me them, and it's my obligation to extract them. And I've become older and wiser at understanding or identifying what these things might be. And I listen to different, I hate to say the word feeling, but I listen to certain feelings that I get based on what I end up doing and how I pour into people and what I pour into people with. It helps me to identify these things, especially when you understand whatever it is you're doing. If you're in that flow state or genius or zone of genius, maybe perhaps that's the thing that God imparted to you. That is the thing that you could actually extend to others and make others better with. And that's very important to understand and identify. So not doing things haphazardly or just mundanely, like having a vacuous presence in the world. What you're doing, and when you know what it is you're good at, because whenever you do this thing, you get there's this reciprocity effect tethered to it, and you get filled up, and there's something that forms inside of you as a result of you pouring into whatever it is you're doing, and you can't help but follow that feeling. That's why I say it's a feeling.
You use the word obligation, and I find the word obligation very interesting when you talk about people who have a gift. And one of the thoughts I've heard, and I want your thoughts on it, is people say that if you have a gift, and this is a gift that your duty and your obligation is to give it to the world, if you don't give it to the world because you say, I'm going to just sit on the couch, I'm just going to go eat my Cheetos, I'm just going to not do the things that I need to do, that in fact, instead of the person who is going out and doing those things, the person who's building the big thing, they're always considered the greedy person. But in fact, the person who's sitting on the couch, who has that gift, who's not giving their gift to the world, who's not hitting their obligation to the world, is actually the one who's greedy.
Selfish. Sure. And what you should be doing is hard, and you know that, and that's why you take a seat. Because it's easier to take a seat and to not move than it is to run a mile, especially when no one's telling you to. And that's what that person is doing that sits on the couch. They could be going out and running that mile, and I'm just putting this into a loose illustration over what their obligation is. Instead, they choose the easy way. But that easy way is actually the worst and most hardest way that they could actually travel down, because what it's doing is it's developing this non-existent level of contribution to the planet. And we as humans need to contribute something. I mean, there's two things that we as humans do. We do it subconsciously. We seek out a mate and we find a way to contribute. When we contribute, we get filled up. So whatever that is, that could be our talent, that could be something that you feel pressed to do, it could be something of a serving nature, etc. But whatever it is, you're contributing. You're contributing to the earth, the people around you, etc. So those two things that we know inherently we must do, that are just biologically woven in us. The contribution part, that can be parsed out into different arenas. Like, well, are you contributing just for you, or are you just making ends meet to provide for your rent and your car payment, insurance, etc.? Or are you trying to build something to extend to other people? And that could be something that pursuit is much more arduous than the one of just working to make ends meet. And I would define the man that sits at home and does, eats Cheetos and shit as the one that just follows that normal pursuit of working to make ends meet. Clearly, he's got to work to provide for whatever shelter he's living in and whatever transportation has the means of. So those are the two different positions you can hold in terms of, well, I'm going to contribute. In what way and how much and for how long after you die is your contribution going to live on? And I think as more so men, we have this pride centered around that. Like, we want to be remembered when we die. It's like we still seek out status even when we're dead. We seek out status right now, and we often seek it out when we're dead too. And that's why we try to build so much, because we want our name at the end of that skyscraper. So when we die and that skyscraper is still there, everybody will know who built it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think legacy is something that is inherent, to a lot of people. I know certainly for me, it's something that the legacy I want to see is really through others, is the way that I look at my legacy. It's not necessarily through the things that I'm doing, but it's through the things that I'm doing through the people that I'm working with. And I think, again, I pick on John Danaher because he talks about the difference between somebody who coaches and they see success through others versus the athlete who sees success through their own endeavors. And so, to me, I really took that to heart, and I'm like, yeah, that really speaks to me, because I find so much when I can help somebody hit their goals, that is just so much bigger than if I'm hitting my own. It just feels, as you talk about feelings, it just feels right.
Yeah, but that's something you've built. You can't build others unless you've built yourself first.
True.
So that's what I'm saying is, I'm not talking about just tangible things that you can touch and feel, like a skyscraper. I'm talking about that's an illustration I use loosely, but you have to build yourself if you're going to have any hopes of building anybody else. So you've had to go through the challenges and the arduous nature in general to build yourself so that you can then give that man to other people.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think if you have not worked on yourself enough and you're trying to go out and help people do things that you've not done, it's very difficult. Like, I can't tell somebody how to run $1 billion company. I can help somebody run $1 million company. I can help people with very specific things in, $100 million companies. but I can't tell them how to run $100 million company.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell somebody how to do fairly well at jiu-jitsu, but I mean, I could never coach somebody on an MMA fight because I've never been in one before.
Sure.
Now, the only person who's ever been really successful at teaching somebody something they've never done before, again, I pick on John Danaher because he's never won a competition. That's really notable. He's never been in an MMA fight. And hasn't he taught the greats in that space? He's the conundrum.
Yeah. I wonder if he has any regrets over that.
I mean, he had a lot of physical ailments that stopped him from being hyper competitive. And I hear a lot of coaches talk about this is the people who I actually did a podcast with a guy who was a UFC fighter. And he said there's a lot of people where their body gives up way before they do. And then they become amazing coaches because they project what they can do through the people that they're coaching.
Sure.
Because their body just wasn't able to do the things. I mean, in a world of altered carbon where we could put ourselves into different bodies, he would have been the best in the world.
Sure. I wonder if
year after year.
Because he gets these fighters ready to compete. And I wonder if when he gets them ready, he's done it so many times, how he just thinks to himself, man, I wish I would want to try that. I want to do that. I wonder if he's ever had regrets over that because he's been a part of the process so many times at such a high level.
Yeah, it's been repeatable for him. It's not just a one and done. I mean, he's produced so many amazing athletes and then taken amazing athletes and made them even better with Nicholas Mergali. And so I think that's something that I find extremely interesting. And I love watching coaching in sports and then taking that mentality and applying it to the business world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I find people like him extremely interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. My hopes are is to have him on the podcast one day.
One day, man. You'll get him.
One day. Yeah. Well, Justin, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I think we have so many similar beliefs in what it takes to really be successful. And I want people to be able to reach out to you. And for them to reach out, they would go to the official justingroth.com page. But you also have an app that you released, and I want to make sure people hear about that.
Yeah, so it's called Elite Mind and Fitness. It's going to be on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. It's going to be Elite Mind Plus Fitness. But you'll see it there. It's basically a personal trainer in your pocket. So you get structured workouts, macro targets to meet every day. You have 24/7 access to me as well if you have any questions. So it's basically a coach, a trainer in your pocket for a very, very affordable rate. We offer the FitStar program at just $14.99. And although that might increase, although we've had a lot of demand, and with demand comes a little bit of an inflation because it's going to be hard to meet the expectations if we don't. Well,
you're hyper giving on the offer, so
yeah,
absolutely.
So that might increase to a $19.99 sum, but still very, very affordable for people. This is again on just a recurring monthly payment. And then we have a little bit higher of a ticket offer that is a little bit more comprehensive if somebody wants to take their fitness to the next level, and we have a little bit more of a comprehensive plan in place in terms of macro targets, structured workouts, etc. But basically it gives people, for just starting out, a guide, a plan, and gives them an outcome. And that's what they're really after. They're after results. So we are results driven in that app.
We are the same on that, results driven. It's my favorite word. My only other word that I love better than results is revenue, because I do work with a lot of businesses. So I tell everybody revenue is my love language. And so that's my favorite thing to talk about. So I wish you all the best with the programs that you've got. I know you're going to crush it.
Love it.
And Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate your time, bro.
And with that, guys, this is the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. We will see you on the next one.